everybody out there in Breakthrough Land. I'm so happy that you are joining us here today. Welcome to our weekly Wednesday webinar where we bring really fantastic subject matter experts in all things real estate to you to help you really build up your wonderful real estate muscle. So we have a fantastic topic for you today. It's called Creative Lending in a Shifting Market. And we all know we are shifting right now. I know you feel it. I felt it. Everybody's felt it. Well, we have a fantastic guest for you today. He is brilliant, and he is a brilliant mortgage loan officer who can really give us some great ideas. Let me tell a little bit about him. His name is Jeff Quincey. And Jeff has built a successful mortgage business over the last 19 years by taking an educative approach with his clients and referral partners. His entire mission is to show clients how they can create general wealth through real estate and their prospective financing options. Although this approach takes more time in educating and explaining options, it has proven to create lifetime clients and establishes him as a mortgage professional and not just an order taker. What an amazing bio. All right. Hey, Jeff, come on in and let's get this party started. I'm throwing it over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. You know, as she mentioned, I've built my business over the last 19 years, taking a very educative approach to mortgages, something a lot of people don't do. And every class I do or anytime I speak, this next slide that I'm going to have up is something I talk big about, something we talk about internally within our branch, is the difference between an order taker and a sales professional. And that's just important to me. Most people don't do it because it takes time, right? They want to turn and burn. So I highly encourage you in your real estate career, really the same thing, right? What can you do to educate? I was doing a class a couple of months ago and I led with this. Instead of telling people we're experts, let's educate them and let them arrive at the decision themselves that we are the expert. Right? That carries so much more value and weight with that client as we're trying to build those clients and keep them for a lifetime. So today we're going to go over just some creative things. I'm based with Fairway Independent Mortgage here in the Phoenix, Arizona market. We are a nationwide mortgage lender. So if you're working in a market outside of Arizona, we are licensed individually in other states. Also, I have top referral partners if we don't hold those licenses. So just keep that in mind. We always like to help provide education such as we are today to the real estate community. So I mentioned it, right? Order taker versus being a sales professional. I think this is the biggest takeaway probably from this entire webinar, and I tell people this every time, is an order taker is a transaction that could happen if we aren't involved in it, right? So what that means, and we see this in real estate a lot, is people are able to educate themselves over the internet. So it's hard to reposition our value, if you will, as a real estate professional or myself as a mortgage professional. So it's very important to understand that, right? That definition of an order taker is if that's how you're viewed, they think they can complete the transaction without you. We're on the flip side of that. If we're a sales professional, right? That's someone who is able to uncover some unseen value, which is what I'm hoping I can provide to you today to take out to your clients and separate you in the marketplace. We take and provide new information, maybe a new way of thinking in some cases. And then based on that, we can allow these consumers to make a more educated decision that maybe they didn't know existed. So always like to lay that foundation out. But the reason why, you know, me and Cole were talking, she asked me to come on and kind of talk about what's going on in mortgages and how we're getting creative on the lending side. Well, the market is down everywhere, right? There's a few things happening right now. We all know rates are on the rise. They're going to continue. In fact, I just released my rate update email first thing this morning. Fed meeting is next week. Inflation numbers still out of control. We're going to see those rates continuing to go up. So how do we combat that, right? That's creating a lot of fear in buyers. It's also impacting their affordability or their approvability on the loan. Sellers have been very lucky over the last 2 years, seeing some of the highest equity gains that they've seen in their entire lifetime of owning a house. So there's some unrealistic expectations that have been set by sellers. And I like to call that the my neighbor syndrome. Well, my neighbor sold the house across the street that's just like mine 8 months ago for 600. Why are you saying we should list at 550? Right. So we got to bridge that gap of the expectations in relation to where the market is actually at and be able to communicate that effectively.
Oh
And the
my gosh,
reality
I
is,
love that, Jeff. I'm sorry, but I just think
yeah,
that my neighbor syndrome,
mhm.
I'm sorry, I just love that. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
I wish I had a stat on it. I can only imagine 8 out of every 10 listing appointments, something along those lines is coming up, right?
Yeah.
Well, my
Mhm.
neighbor just did this, or my family member just did this, and they're in a completely different market, but perception's reality, right? So they
Mhm.
perceive that, and it's reality for them. So the reality right now in most markets is that we have more inventory, right? Phoenix, just in a very short period of time, went from 2,500 listings to like we're just shy of 20,000 listings. So inventory has went up 8 times. So that provides more choices for buyers and less competition. That's a great thing for buyers, but it's not a great thing if you're a seller, right? So hopefully, what I am going to show you here today helps bring a win-win situation to both sides of the party, as well as some additional ways in which people can win. And the solution is that we're going to provide this information to help you professionally bridge the gap between sellers and buyers in this shifting market where buyers are fearful, sellers have unrealistic expectations about sales price, and that's clouding their ability to make a smart financial decision, or I would even reword that, an educated financial decision. So the solution is we're going to talk about some buy downs. And to lay that framework, we first need to understand what the difference is between a permanent buy down and a temporary buy down. So I have some bullet points. I'm not going to read through those. Permanent buy down is exactly what it sounds like. Either the buyer or the seller, through seller concessions, contributes money to buy down their rate lower than where the market rate is at today. And that rate stays low for the entire period of their loan. Now, some of the downsides to that is the break-even points are usually longer. And when I say break-even points, and this is kind of how I educate my clients, is we simply take the cost of that buy down, we divide it by their monthly payment savings. So if it costs them $10,000 for easy math, and they're going to save $100 a month on their payment, we can do that math and say, okay, it's a 100-month break-even point, about 8 years. Okay, you are going to have to be not in the house, but in this mortgage for 8 years in order to break even on that decision to pay that money today, which in some cases isn't a bad idea. Go back 9-10 months ago when rates were in the high twos, low threes, doing a permanent buy down might have made sense because they could stay in that forever, right? It's a great idea when we know that in the future rates are going to go up. Permanent buy downs can be, as I mentioned, both seller and buyer funded. Moving over the temporary buy down, which is the premise of our conversation today, also called, you might hear it in the marketplace as a 2-1 buy down. You may hear a 3-2-1 buy down, which can only be used on new construction. But the benefit is over the course of the first 2 years, in year one, that rate is 2% lower than the market rate. In year two, it's 1% lower. And then years 3 through 30, it goes back to the original rate they were supposed to have on day one. It's more cost effective for the buyer. You're going to see that in a moment. There really is no break-even point like there is on a permanent. There is a convoluted way where I can do some calculations, and I'll show you that at the end of our talk here today. It's great if we know rates are going to go down in the short-term future, right? We're getting lower rates for 2 years. So what's going to happen with rates in the short term? I mentioned rates are continuing to go up because of trying to get in front of inflation and what they're doing with the Fed funds rate. So all speculation, I've been saying this since the beginning of the year when rates started going up, is that rates will at some point in time, a matter of when, not if, probably land between 4 and 4.5. My reason for that is we were there for about a decade prior to COVID hitting and rates going super low. I was a little bit validated. If you want to Google this, the chief economist for Fannie Mae came out, I believe it was 2 weeks ago on a Monday, and his prediction is in Q1 of next year, rates will be around 4.75, and by Q4 of next year, probably rest somewhere around 4.5%. So I kind of felt a little bit validated because a lot of this is just speculation. But so if we know rates as of today have gone over 6%, but they're going to come back down, let's give our buyers a reprieve on those payments while we wait. It's almost like a bridge loan, right? We're bridging the gap between where payments and rates are today versus where they're going to go to. And the same thing on the temporary buy down, both seller and buyer can fund it. However, we're going to show you here in a couple of slides where it's best utilized when the seller completely funds that buy down for the buyer. So that's just setting the foundation, understanding the difference between the two. The next thing we need to know, because we're talking about getting concessions in this market, which, by the way, in the last 3 months, we have not received a contract that did not have concessions. We actually received one that would have made my statement inaccurate. However, during the Binzer, which is what we call it here in Arizona, I understand it's not called that, but the inspection period, the clients were able to go back and get seller concessions to completely fund a 2-1 buy down. So that was a pretty cool thing. Now I can say that we haven't had a contract since July 1st that came in without concessions. So on conventional, what a lot of people think is max concessions are 3%. It's only 3% if the client is only putting 5% down. It jumps to 6% if they put a larger down payment down, and you can get as much as 9% in concessions. I'm going to probably argue good luck getting that much in concessions, and where would all that money go? But if they put 25% or more down, a buyer can actually, it's allowed to get a 9% concession. FHA, I'm sorry, Cole?
No, I said, wow, that's good information.
Yeah, I do these classes, here in the branch, and I'll go into real estate offices and I'll ask that question: what's the max concessions, right? For the people writing the contract, what is the max without calling a lender? Everybody gets FHA right, but everybody assumes conventional's 3%. It actually steps up as the down payment increases. With a lot of people selling their homes, they have the ability to put larger down payments down right now. VA, this is another one that most even lenders get wrong. VA, everybody knows and has heard that it's 4% max. That is 4% above and beyond the customary fees, whatever's customary. So we've actually had veterans have a seller pay off a car so they can qualify. Obviously, it's got to be within that 4%, but the 4% does not include standard closing costs. Wow. So that's one thing in our industry that's missed by both lenders and real estate agents. On this 2-1 buy down that we're talking about, though, the government loans, FHA and VA, have to be 100% seller funded. So we're going to get into what that looks like, but the buyer cannot contribute towards that buy down at all. So it's very important that you're working with your lender and covering that at the time of submitting an offer, so you make sure you're asking for the correct amount of concessions, because even if you're off $1, you can no longer do that without going back to the seller and asking. So here's a spreadsheet that I created more as a marketing tool for my real estate partners that I work with. There's a lot of numbers on here, so we're going to take our time and just kind of dissect this. And this is from a couple, probably last Tuesday. You'll see in the top right-hand corner, we have 5.99. We are definitely, since Monday, rates have gone up 0.3%. I think they will continue doing that until Tuesday's Fed meeting. But we just had, a basic address. This is one that I did for an agent. Purchase price is $500,000. Client in this scenario is putting 20% down. So they're putting $100,000 down. That makes their loan amount $400,000. If they don't get any buy downs, right? No price reduction, no buy downs. Their rate would be 5.99, principal and interest only. Yeah, did not mean to do that. The payment would be $23.95 a month. Okay. So I'm going to stop there for a second and explain why we want to position both buyers and sellers with this, right? So one thing that a lot of conversations are happening is price reductions. I was in a real estate office yesterday and the agent was adamant on dropping the price $50,000. Okay. And it was a $650,000 house. So it's a huge price drop, thinking that that was going to entice a buyer to come in. The problem is a $50,000 price drop is 50 grand out of the seller's pocket. And it's only going to save the buyer roughly 250 bucks a month. 250 for most people is a lot of money, but probably not enough to sway the pendulum to go buy that house. But buyers want a deal, which is why I put which one is the deal up in the right-hand corner of this. When we're consulting with buyers, you're going to hear, hey, I heard the market soften. There's more inventory. Let's go find a deal. The problem is their definition of deal all revolves around price. And we're going to debunk that right now on this spreadsheet on why they don't want a price reduction. We're going to educate them. If they can get a price reduction and a buy down, fund it, great. But in this scenario, we're putting this side by side with a $20,000 price reduction. So the buyer gets their deal, right? $480,000, the same 20% down, the same interest rate. Their payment's now only, let's call it $2,300. They save $95.83. Remember earlier I mentioned perception is reality, okay?
Wow.
So the client's perception, a buyer's perception of, hey, I got a deal. They're going to go brag to all their friends. I got a $500,000 house for $480,000. We have the opportunity to come in instead of being an order taker and saying, yeah, let's go get that deal. What if there was a better deal for you? What if we offered this seller the $500,000 list price, same down payment, but in year one, your rate's going to be 3.99. Year two, it's going to be 4.99. Your first year monthly payment is going to go to $1,907. And keep in mind, this is just principal and interest. It's not accounting for taxes, insurance, or any HOAs. Year two, that's going to go to $2,144. So in the first year, every month, they're saving $488, almost $400 more than if they got the price reduction. Can we all agree that that is a much better financial situation for that client? Do we build trust with them at a higher level when we show them the illustration of how the numbers actually work? Absolutely.
Love it.
This is how we allow that client to move to the point of this person I'm working with is an expert without us saying we're an expert, right? Anybody can say anything they want. Year two, so let's assume everybody's wrong, rates don't come down next year. Year two, we're going to save $250 a month. So roughly $150 more than if they got the price reduction. That leads us to the number one question we always get. Jeff, what's the cost of this? Well, the cost is simply the $488.28 monthly savings for year one, plus the $250 savings for year two. So 24 months of savings. Whatever that money is that's saved is the cost of that buy down. So $88.68. That money that we're going to ask the seller to give in the form of a concession goes into an escrow account, separate of their taxes and insurance escrow account. And technically, because one of the questions we always get is, well, this sounds like an ARM. This client is going to sign a note at the closing table for 5.99. The lender is absolutely going to, every month from day one, get a payment, principal and interest payment of $23.95. Our buyer is only going to pay $1,907, and they're going to, for that first year, every month, they're going to go siphon $488 out of that escrow account to subsidize this payment and make it whole to the lender. So it is not an ARM. Your rate is always $599. It's just a subsidized payment. Okay. So we see the benefit to this from the buyer, right? Almost $400 a month for the first 12 months, $150 additional savings for months 13 through 24. Here's the cool thing. If they had done a $20,000 price reduction, and I just do seller gross proceeds, I'm not accounting for their payoff, I'm not accounting for realtor commissions or closing costs, right? Just base numbers, apples to apples. They do a $20,000 price reduction, that's instantly 20 grand out of the seller's pocket. But over here, they only had to give a concession of 8,800. So they made 491 gross, before we take anything out of that. So down here, the seller on this exact same transaction netted an extra $11,000 in their pocket, and they had further enticement other than a price reduction to get that buyer to come in and write a contract. In the meantime, the buyer saved an extra $6,500 above and beyond had they just done a price reduction. And all that number is just the difference between had they got the price reduction versus the 2-1 buy down. Here's where it gets exciting. And when I explain this to agents as well as clients, so Jeff, what happens a year from now, September 2023, rates drop to 4.5. We're obviously going to get this client down from the 5.99 to 4.5 with a refi. Great question. Take the 488.28 times 12 months. Rough math is that's about $6,000 that was used. That's gone from the escrow account. The other roughly $2,800 is still sitting there. The seller's long gone from the transaction. They moved on with their life. They got that transaction closed. And now here you are as the buyer a year later refinancing. The $2,800 is not lost. It's actually applied towards your closing costs of the refi.
Sweet.
Or let's say we can refi in 6 months and there's $6,000 sitting there. What's absolutely going to pay the cost of your refinance, and the additional amount goes towards a principal reduction. One of the things that lenders get a bad rap for, and there's a term for this in our industry called churning. There's a lot of rules around it. Is there some predatory lenders that will refinance you at a purposely higher interest rate, call you back 6 months later, refinance you again at the lower rate you should have the first time? They're churning that mortgage. And every time you do that, you're rolling in those closing costs, which makes sense to roll them in because $3,000 in closing costs is only changing your payment $15. 3,000 divided by 15 is 200-month break-even point. Absolutely, you always roll them in. You never come in with money out of your pocket. So they sell you on that. But here you are a year later, and you've rolled in $6,000, $7,000 worth of closing costs, and you now owe more on the house than the day you started, even though you have a lower interest rate, right?
Yeah.
So that's what excites me about this program, is that you never lose that money. If you go back to the slide about permanent versus temporary buy down, you do a permanent buy down, and on the last slide, I'm going to show you the numbers, but right now, the same cost of this buy down I'm illustrating would cost, save on the payment about $180 a month. Okay. And so when you do that permanent buy down and you go ask for, let's call it 2% of the sales price, on this scenario, that would be $10,000. The second you close, there is an absolute break-even month and the money's gone. If you refinance or sell the house before the break-even month, you have lost money. You didn't lose money. You lost money the seller gave you. They don't care. They've already moved from the transaction. So how cool that your transaction's complete. You got the house of your dreams, and the seller's still giving you a value a year down the road or 6 months down the road.
So cool on this, Jeff. Here's the thing that I love about this. We talk about in negotiations, creating win-win scenarios, right? And if both sides really get a benefit from it, that can create such a stronger negotiation with both sides of it. So this is just a brilliant way to move forward with your sellers and your buyers to create that win-win scenario.
Cole, and you just teed that up perfectly, right? Win-win. I put it right there on the slide, right? Win-win compared to price reduction.
Yeah.
There's another win-win that nobody thinks about, and lenders aren't talking about it. If you're a listing agent, my question, and nobody needs to answer this, but just think about this to yourself. If you have a listing, say you're listing this property at 889 South 229th Drive, what is the number one, in my opinion, best way to get your next listing?
I believe the seller.
What's that?
Yeah, go ahead.
My belief or my opinion is the best way to get a listing when you already have one is do an awesome job that the seller's going to talk about you and the neighbors are going to notice you.
Yeah.
Right? You do so well on your marketing efforts and getting it sold. And what we lose sight of is we just want to get that one transaction. And I do another class on this in regards to transactional versus relational. And all we're focused on, and right, our fiduciary responsibility of that seller is getting the house sold and letting them move on with their life, their next stage. I get that. However, if that is your mission and you become transactional and you're not looking out for that seller's best interest or the neighborhood, we haven't talked about that yet. And you go slash that price 30 grand. What neighbor is beating down your door to come sell their house? Hey, Cole, thank you so much for just killing my property value. Come list my home and do the same thing. It sounds fun, right?
Yep.
And I give a precursor to that, and that is, I understand there are situations where maybe we won the listing, but the seller wasn't realistic at the time. So now we need to make a market adjustment. So I'm not saying that price reductions are always bad. However, if you do that, good luck getting future listings in that neighborhood. Under this scenario, those neighbors are going to be like, oh my gosh, they listed at 500. I was kind of excited about it. I didn't think they would get it. And they did what they do. And then you get to go in with your marketing plan and say, this is exactly how we did it.
Nice.
You know, we've led with the seller giving up some concessions, but on the market side of it, you kept the neighborhood happy. You kept comps in order. So that's an additional win. And then the one that we won't talk about as much, but it's a win for both agents on each side of the deal, is did we keep commissions in check, right? Like, who wants to get a commission on 500,000 versus 450 for the same work, right? So literally everybody involved in the transaction, in my opinion, wins if this is set up properly. So I'll end here because it's a lot of numbers. You guys can always reach out to me. I'll have my contact information at the end. I can always run scenarios on specific properties or buyer scenarios. Obviously, that the interest rate changes on every client as well as the down payment, which affects these numbers. But it goes back to, we got to educate the buyers that their perception, their reality of the deal is wrong, and it's okay. In that same vein, because I just mentioned the perception being wrong, I had a client reach out to me about 2 weeks ago wanting a rate update. And it was via email. I sent it back to him, and he responded back almost immediately and said, Jeff, I want to look at ARMs since rates are at all-time highs. Now, keep in mind, this client was probably 32, 33 years old.
Wow.
And I kind of chuckled because I've been doing this, when I got in the business, rates were 7%. And you hear people that have been doing this for 40 years, they remember when rates were 18. I kind of chuckled and I responded back and I said, historically, rates are usually 6 to 8%. If you want to go way back, they go into the teens. We just got really lucky these last 12 years that they had to prop the economy up with lower rates. Took him 5 minutes. He responded and he said, I just Googled historical mortgage rates, and you're absolutely right. Now, I could have made fun of him. I could have got mad at him. But the truth is, his perception, his entire adult life, that he would ever have a reason to look at mortgage rates, his perception was reality. It's the highest rates he's ever seen as an adult. Sure. So just a little nugget when you're out there, don't get frustrated with people, especially if they're younger in age. That perception is truly their reality. They don't know any different. So we have to educate.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing I just do real quick, we're going to buzz through this, is, well, how soon to sell or refi? We talked about there's really no true break-even point like there is on a permanent buy down. So this one, I just took the net savings to the buyer over the 2 years, 24 months. I divided that by the $95.83 savings that they would have continued to get over the 2-year mark, okay, on the $20,000 price reduction. That added another 68 months. So technically, this buyer could sell or refinance within 92 months and still come out ahead from the price reduction. It's important to still kind of draw that out, because we know that our industry is cyclical. Even if everybody's wrong, rates are probably coming down sooner than 7 years and 8 months, right? Also, what NAR's averages, everybody sells their house, it was 4 to 7 years. I think as the new data comes out over the next 5 years, you're going to see that move to probably more like 6 to 10 years, because so many people bought houses and refinanced houses at 2.99. 3.125, and now that's a motivating factor for them not to move as soon as they would have. So that's my prediction, on that front. But still 7 years and 8 months to refinance or sell and still come out ahead.
Amazing.
And then the last kind of side by side I like to do, I don't show my work on this. My math teacher from high school would be not a fan of me, but I backed into what would we need to generate this payment right here on the 2-1 buy down for that first year. Okay, they're doing a $400,000 loan amount. Well, they would have to have a loan amount of $318,473. And if we're apples to apples comparison on this with 20% down, that would mean a purchase price at $398. So either the buyer would have to put an additional $81,527 down, or the seller would have to reduce their price by almost $102,000 to get the same benefit of just giving the buyer $8,800 in concessions. That's massive. If we can show the data, this makes sense to people.
Boy, it really does. I'm just loving this. Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. So the last piece is the temporary versus permanent. So today's rates, I did those at 5.99. Today, with excellent credit, we're at 6.49. It's a moving target every morning. We never know. Temporary buy down, gonna usually cost about 2% in concessions, 1.9 something, but I always say roughly 2%. That's going to get, in this scenario, the first year rate to 4.49, the second year 5.49, and then 6.49 for the remainder of the loan. I went and priced this maybe 30 minutes before we started. If we got that same 2% concession from the seller and we wanted to do a permanent buy down, it would only take their rate from 6.49 to 5.875. On this scenario, they would only save $180 a month compared to almost $400 a month, right? So like to illustrate that, because if we get the permanent buy down, we get 5.875 and we're happy about saving $180 a month. And then all of a sudden in 6 months, rates go down to 4.5, you're refinancing anyways, but now you're paying the closing cost on that.
Right.
Versus those seller funds.
Yep.
So that is the meat and potatoes of my 2-1 buy down and how we're educating clients to win and get a true deal. So the next time you have a listing that you're even thinking about doing a price reduction, or you have a buyer who wants that true deal, reach out to me. Even if I'm not licensed and able to do loans in your state, I have a nice network across the country that I can connect you with somebody who works and thinks just like me.
Beautiful on that, Jeff. Great. Okay, so, and if you could stop your share for me for a second, that would be awesome.
Yep.
Jeff, by the way, we are going to be posting this on our Facebook group for everybody. So you're going to be able to see this again. I'm going to also make sure in that post that I've got Jeff's contact information. This was so powerful. And here's the thing I just love about it, Jeff. I'm a real big believer in that win-win scenario. And when you have created that for our agents, and now they can go in, and by the way, with a beautiful piece of marketing that would help them explain that, that's powerful for all of our breakthrough agents. So I appreciate so much the hard work that you put into that and the effort that you've put into sharing all of this with our amazing agents.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Cole. I'm a huge fan and I love what you're doing with Breakthrough. So guys, if you're not already working with Cole, I'm a big believer in coaches. I have 2, right? I got one at the branch level. I got one at corporate. I got everybody on me. And it's how I've built my business over 19 years is because the best of the best always have a coach or they have multiple coaches. So I can't speak highly enough of Cole and what her team does. So that's my shameless plug.
And I appreciate that so much. Hey, just along those veins, guys, if you are interested in a free business consultation, this is what I do every day, and I absolutely geek out on it. If you would like to have a free business consultation about your business, you can feel free to scan this QR code. and it'll get you right to my calendar, and we can set aside 45 minutes and we can chat all about your business. So fantastic. And if you are not already a member of this Facebook group, or if you know someone who would like to be a member of our Facebook group, simply send them to facebook.com/groups/breakthrough RE. Once again, Jeff, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
See everybody later. Have a great one. Bye.